If you want to study abroad and not make any mistakes, keep on watching this video. Last semester, I studied abroad in Florence, Italy, and this being my first semester of college ever, I did not know what to expect, and I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of the time I was studying, I was actually very stressed out, and I didn't have as much fun as I could have had if I had watched one of these videos. So, after living in a different country for a good 4 months, I think this is my time to tell you guys everything that you need to know in order to not hate your studying abroad experience. The first tip that I have is do not pack lightly. You will have many different options of places where you can go shop for your clothes. If you want a new pair of jeans or anything like that, you will have a place to buy them. However, depending on the country that you are in, you will probably not have a lot of access to the name brand products that you are used to. If you have a certain shampoo that you really like or a specific perfume that you really like, they will probably not have the exact thing that you want. Even with shampoos and conditioners, in Italy, conditioners weren't called conditioners, they were called hair masks. So for a while, I wasn't actually using conditioner, I was just using a different brand of shampoo that I thought was conditioner. And let me tell you, that really messed up my hair. So any toiletries or decorations, sometimes even specific school supplies, any sort of essentials that you know that you can't live without and you want that specific brand, definitely pack with you. The next thing is your room. This may seem self-explanatory, but you are going to want your room to feel like your safe place and be decorated in the way that you want it to be. So if you have anything from your room at home, like posters, paintings, stuffed animals, even if you have a specific pillow that you really like to sleep with, or a blanket, try to bring all of that stuff with you. There will be stores that you can buy stuff at, but chances are they're not going to fit your aesthetic and they are not going to really feel homey to you. They're still going to feel new and honestly not like America. So if you want your room to really feel like a safe place for you to rest and relax, I definitely recommend bringing these stuff with you. If you are planning on buying things off of Amazon in order to decorate your dorm or apartment, be careful with that. Amazon works differently in a lot of different countries. In Italy, we had Amazon It, and it did have certain products that I wanted. However, they often did not have name brand items. There also probably won't be a Target or anything like that nearby. So try not to make the mistake of waiting until the last minute or expecting to buy everything there in order to decorate your room, because if you're like me, then your room isn't going to really feel like you, and it's not going to feel like a safe place for you to hunker down in at night. It's just going to feel kind of like another touristy place to you. The next is traveling. If you're watching this video, I am guessing you're planning on traveling a lot in the next semester, but you might not be planning to travel as much as you actually are. I was actually planning on having my weekends spent at a coffee shop, doing my schoolwork, studying for tests, and hanging out with my friends within Italy. However, 90% of the time that was not the case. You will be traveling a lot, and I mean a lot. And this means you are going to be needing to save up a lot of money. A lot of money. Do not go into your study abroad experience expecting to be flying everywhere or even taking a train everywhere. If you are trying to save money in the best possible way, take the bus. Trains are definitely the second best option, and I would say take a flight. Specifically, choose Ryanair. A lot of people say that it's a sketchy airline because of how cheap it is, and they really don't let you bring a suitcase any bigger than this. But if you were trying to save that money and if you were traveling a lot, I definitely recommend that being one of the only airlines that you do take. Trains are a great way to travel as well, but if you're really trying to save on that money, definitely take the bus. It might not be the most comfortable option, especially if you're planning on doing it overnight, because that way you can save even more money, but it definitely will be worth it in the long run. The next one is the biggest one for me. It does kind of go without saying, however, I do think it needs to be talked about more, and that is to be ready to be put into very uncomfortable situations. And I am not talking about going out to a coffee shop on your own and talking to the locals there, trying to understand their language. That is going to be the easy part. But what I am talking about is the change in culture. Living in a country that speaks an entirely different language to you is something that people definitely worry about a lot. However, you will adapt to it very quickly, and it doesn't actually end up being that big of a problem, I guess in my case. But the locals may treat you very differently. You have to be prepared for people to yell at you, and you have to be prepared for people to not like you. I'm not even talking about your friends or roommates or anything like that. I am specifically talking about the locals. In certain places, if you are a student studying abroad, the locals may not like you just because you're American. It kind of sounds stupid and maybe wrong. However, it is true. And not just because you're speaking a different language than them, but sometimes it is just in their culture to be more aggressive, to talk really loudly, or to just not smile at you and to actually just stare at you. Your first few weeks there and even the first few months are going to be very uncomfortable. And if you do not like change, maybe don't study abroad, or test yourself by studying abroad so you can grow into a more mature person. So if you're put into a very hard situation, if someone is yelling at you, or if people are staring at you on the streets, or even if you feel really uncomfortable sitting next to a bunch of locals on a 10-hour bus ride, you have to just take a deep breath and understand, one, if the locals are being rude to you, it's not personal. That's just the way they are. Maybe they're not even trying to be rude, and it's just in their culture, the way that they're acting, and you have to understand that. And then you just have to move on with your day. Studying abroad takes a lot of resilience, and it takes a lot of patience. Going into this experience, I had neither. And let me tell you, that was extremely hard to deal with. I'm a very sensitive person, and so I hated my first time that I got yelled at in Italy. And I hated how people walked so slowly or so close to you on the streets. Everything really just made me uncomfortable. And then I ended up being just negative about it for the entire day. And I literally just felt bad for myself. And guess what? That made me hate every second of the day. But if you go into this experience with an open mind and literally just ignore your surroundings and try to take in everything that's good and throw out everything that's bad, then you honestly will have a really good experience. The next one is food. You're probably used to eating the same foods that your parents have at their house or the same foods that you get from the dining hall almost every day. Studying abroad, all of this is going to change. Again, sounds self-explanatory, but it is not. It is great to experience the culture and eat all the foods that they eat. However, this is not sustainable. I tried to eat like Italians eat basically every single day. Pizza for lunch, pasta for dinner. I actually ended up getting really sick because of this. My blood sugar would rise and fall almost every second of the day, and I would feel really tired and malnourished. The only time I actually felt good after eating a meal was when me or one of my roommates was cooking. If you have a grocery store near you, go to it all the time. Even if you don't know how to cook, try to take up cooking if you can. My program didn't have a dining hall for us to eat at, so it was either we went to a restaurant or we made food for ourselves at home. It is going to be beneficial for you if you try to eat the same things that you did in America. Get some recipes for food that your mom made at home, or even just make yourself a sandwich with the normal stuff that you would eat. Not only will this add a sense of comfort to you, but it also will be so much better for your body. Even if you think the locals are eating healthier foods than you would be at home in America, if you completely change what you eat every single day, along with a complete change in environment from where you're living, and maybe even a time change, your hormones are going to go crazy and you will get sick. I promise. I actually had to go to the hospital one time to get blood work done because they didn't know what was wrong with me, when really it was just my body reacting to all the different foods that I was consuming and literally the amount of carbs that I was putting into my body. So please try to focus on the foods that you're consuming and make sure that they're right for you. Finally, getting sick. Getting sick is horrible in any way, but when you get sick and you're 5,000 miles away from your family, and they have completely different medicine than you do, and a completely different healthcare system, it is going to be 10 times worse. It is very common for college students to get really sick during their first semester, the freshman flu, but I promise that is going to hit even worse in a different country. I got incredibly sick around my second week. I had horrible vertigo. I couldn't see anything when I went to school, and I literally went out and bought myself a thermometer because I thought I was dying of a fever. Now, I was ill-prepared and I did not bring any medication from home. Not only did I not bring any NyQuil or Dayquil or any cold medication, but I also didn't bring any ibuprofen or Tylenol. You may think that you could buy these things in a pharmacy in a different country, which sometimes is true, but also they will be different. In Italy, the pharmacies had a cap for the amount of milligrams that they could give for pain medication, and they also didn't even have Dayquil or NyQuil or Mucinex. So the pain relievers never really worked on me, and the only thing that I could do when I got sick sick was call a doctor. Going to a doctor will be stressful for the first time, especially in a new country. But if you're sick, they will prescribe you with medication. I feel like that's obvious, but what I mean is if you have even just a cold, or if you have the flu or COVID, that doctor will write a prescription for you and you can get a bunch of different medications from the pharmacy. The annoying thing about this, however, is that they're not name brand medications. So for me, they just said a bunch of random different Italian words to explain what it did and the ingredients that were in it. But I couldn't read that Italian. So I tried to ask the pharmacist what was in this medication and what I was taking. And they didn't really understand what I was asking. They just kept saying, oh yeah, fever, stomachache, whatever. And I was like, okay, but which one is it for? And she was like, all fever, whatever. So I really didn't even know what I was putting into my body, which honestly made my anxiety 10 times worse. So the point of this is buy your medications before you go. I promise this will be so helpful and take away so much of your anxiety, and it will really help you feel in control when you're sick and taken care of. Obviously, every study abroad experience is different, and maybe some people didn't even run into any of these problems and it's only me. But like I said, as someone who didn't fully enjoy their experience and was just stressed out most of the time, these are definitely the biggest things that I recommend doing, and I think it's best to know before you fly all the way across the world. Anyways, if this was helpful to y'all, let me know. I can definitely make more of these videos or talk about my situation specifically. And if you enjoyed this or have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Bye!